Okay.
We're live?
We're live.
Okay. Welcome to the Eureka Springs Parks and Recreation Commission special meeting, September 7th, 2021. Can I get a motion to call the meeting to order?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. Dave, would you call roll?
Sure. Scott Barton,
Here.
Scott Miskell, Interim Director.
Here.
Sue,
Here.
Kevin Rulli,
Here?
Carmen Burton,
Here.
Dave Hartman here.
Okay. Approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Also move.
Okay,
I'll second that.
all right. Discussion. Just to clarify, the only issue we'll be taking up on the agenda, if you didn't get the updated copy, is the application for the AFC Urban and Community Forest Grant. Is that what everybody's understanding is? Correct. Okay. We got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh, I said aye.
Okay. All right. Scott, would you like to
I sure will.
talk about it?
Yes, there are actually two grants that we'll be applying for that are forestry related, but one of them isn't due for several months. And that one's a much larger grant. So we're cutting our teeth on this one. And this is an urban forestry grant. As you can see, the total that we're seeking is $21,887.50, but it's a 50-50 matching, which is why we wanted to get approval of this evening. We've got to get the grant application in just a few days, and obviously, if the commission doesn't authorize the funds for the match, then we shouldn't be pursuing it further. At any rate, rather than taking up any more of the commission's time, I would like to introduce two people that have been assisting on this and other grants. And you've met them both in the past. There's Stephen Dickey and Chris Fisher. Gentlemen, we have perhaps 5 minutes apiece to accomplish this. Which one of you wanted to go first? Okay.
Good evening. Do you all have copies of the narrative or an outline of the grant at all?
No, what we gave them was, because our time was so limited, we have the trifold brochure that Stephen
Okay.
put together.
This one here.
Yes.
Well, without taking you down each and every angle of the grant, we have set up 4 separate components, one of which is described as create an open space assessment framework. The second section is called create a preliminary conservation management implementation framework plan. That's a long-winded title for simply developing conservation concepts. The third section is to advance the Lake Leatherwood City Park Glade Research Project Plan. And then the fourth component is community participation. So briefly, the open space assessment framework is designed to collect data and information specific to the natural habitats that are found within the full system of all the park's properties, from in-town, encapsulating all of the spring reservations, Harmon Park, Basin Park, the easements, rights-of-ways, pathways, and means of connection between those properties to then Black Bass Lake Park and then Lake Leatherwood Park. And the intent there is to gather ecological sensitive species information and really come to grips with the various habitats that that those lands occupy. That'll set up a methodology then for going into the second component, which is the conservation management plan, which will then identify techniques, methodology, and approaches by various professionals to conserve the spaces, meaning that we will enhance the forest dynamic or the natural habitat dynamic by intervening like the Glade project will do. Like in the spring reservation improvement plan to look at drainage or spring water discharge, or even the built environment that needs some attention that would enhance the habitat factor of each space. Then Stephen will describe further just a bit the Glade portion of the grant. And the final fourth component is called community participation. And we sat down and designed the idea then to invite the public into the process of each of the three working components, to develop volunteer base so that we can get help with identifying habitat areas, particular flora and fauna, and then begin to train a group of master naturalists and whoever to learn some of the skills of the long-term monitoring of all these spaces, to keep an eye out on the progress of the forest and the creatures that live there, the land use, and the different interactions that various humans using the parks will have. So we have set up the grant to use park funding for the most part. That will enable us to not be dependent on another capital source, which we would then have to use while we wait upon the reimbursement factor from the Forestry Commission. So then we've used matching funds to strengthen our ability to show that the Eureka Springs Parks Group and the purveyors of these services are endowed with certain assets that the Forestry Commission will view as positive factors in your request, which is a very fortunate situation. I want to take 1 second to explain that in the past, in every forestry grant that I've done for the city, there has been no budget to proceed. The last budget, we had to borrow money from a donor to operate the grant and wait upon the reimbursement. So to have parks with the luxury of a line item budget to use for this is just such a luxury. I'm really grateful that we can even proceed in that fashion. So I'll let Stephen explain a little bit more on the Glade research aspect. And if there's questions, go ahead and feel free to ask us.
Good evening, everyone. Just like to step through really quick the Glade portion, which is, there's four components he discussed. This is the third component of the application. And in the Glade component, we're talking about basically, I think we've got 5 steps in there. And I'll just step through those really quick. I don't think you have the paperwork on this, but basically identify and recommend 2 research and education glades for restoration. Because last meeting we talked about the glade we're working on right now, the education walked through glade. And we had a trifold for that. And that's still underway and ongoing. But as we move through the plan, which is a kind of a 3-year plan, the second phase is the establishment of an education and research glade for folks to come and learn and teach others or do research on, and for the public to take a closer look at maybe a more, what would you call it, maybe a glade that's not set up more as an educational thing for them to walk through, but it's really one that's set off on the east side of the lake and a little bit more distant and more pristine. So this part is looking at phase 2. Phase 1 is the education glade. Phase 2 is this particular education and research glade. And then phase 3 gets into, okay, can we do more based upon what we've learned? Can we sustain the effort? So the step one would be identify and recommend those 2 research and education glades. Step 2 would be develop a plan for a research and education digital learning center, and that was on the last trifold, and this is basically just exploring that concept. Is it feasible to do so? Can we put something together that is useful to the public to come and learn about glades? Is it cost effective? Can we bring researchers to use such a facility? Can we build a facility or use an existing facility? So it's getting into that so we can fully understand whether or not that's a viable and reasonable thing, a concept in the plan. The third step here is develop information delivery mechanisms. And basically, this is communication. It's getting out and talking to the public, getting a chance for the public to come and learn and stay engaged in the project so they know exactly what's going on and what the goals are. A compendium is the 4th item. I think every stage has a compendium. And then what we do is bring that together so that's something that can be delivered in digital or written format so people can see exactly what has been accomplished and have an input. And then last is printing, of course. When you get done, you want to print the compendium so people have, there's a hard copy available to the commission and to the folks that make the decisions as we move forward. So that is the glade component. And then we have the trifold that you have today. Now the trifold, let me go back on mine and open mine up, is probably the biggest and most important thing on this is on the page that talks about moving forward. And it's the last paragraph on that section that says, the Eureka Springs Parks and Recreation Commission and Park Director support and guide these efforts as we move forward. So as volunteers and as individuals who might get involved as contractors as this moves forward, the key thing is that it's supported and it's managed by the Commission and the Parks Director. So that gives us that confidence to say, okay, we've got a plan. Doesn't mean everything goes in the plan, but it means the guidance is there, the direction is good, the concept you're comfortable with, but you're always going to be there to say, okay, let's steer a little bit this way, let's not go over here. So that's the important part of that particular section. Now the rest of the trifold kind of breaks it down for you. It talks about, on the title page, recreation, education, and ecology, kind of putting it into focus that we're very interested in recreation with the parks. It's a very great resource for our visitors and for the citizens of Eureka Springs and the communities around here. But it's also a point where we can have education venues, so we can expand a little bit and add to the resources and what people can enjoy at the park. And then the foundational element is the ecology point, that last bullet, because it's all focused on, a lot of the effort is focused on sound ecology practices, ecological practices as we go forward. And that's what this research will do, what the overarching, I think, plan is to get a good feel about the ecology. So when we move forward, we do it correctly, and we do it in a manner that's sound. When you get into the other pages, it breaks it down into recreation, education, and ecology. I won't get into those in detail, but basically it tells you what I was thinking and what we're thinking, I think, on those particular bullet points. And we, of course, put this down here in the hopes that if you have questions or if you say that, you know, we need to look a little harder in one area or expand in one area, that's what this is for. It's for that feedback. And that's the trifold. Are there any questions on that?
I have one. Is this grant limiting? In other words, do we apply one time and that's only good for one application, or can we apply annually? Or are we limited by applying no more than 3 times? Or is there any limits to this type of grant?
I don't know that there's an overall limit. It has to be completed within the year, and Chris will correct me if I'm wrong. So we apply now, we have to complete it within the year, and then you can reapply, but you do have to expend those funds, and then you have to, of course, account for all those funds.
So
Right.
within the calendar year or within a 12-month year from when they,
12, is it a 2-year? Okay, so Chris says it's a 2-year
but
completion
it's,
period.
the 2 years starts from when the grant is
Awarded.
awarded, so it's not a calendar year issue, it's 24 months from award.
Right.
Right.
Somewhat unusual. They usually terminate or conclude within a year.
Chris, I can't hear you.
She can't hear you,
Yeah.
she said.
This particular grant cycle is unusual. The Forestry Commission usually issues these grants for over a period of about a year or so. This one extends into 2023 for some reason, and there may be another cycle that the Commission will issue for a grant that would begin in 2022 and perhaps extend into 2024. We're going to give a call to the coordinator in Little Rock and ask some of these pertinent questions about the structure of the grant this week.
So, before you step back, Chris, how do you see this dovetailing with the work that Sandy Formica is about to initiate?
That's what I wanted to supplement in what I had to say tonight. The compelling force of putting this narrative together and working with Steve and Scott was to dovetail, like you said, into the efforts of Sandy Formica and the NRCS. When they're coming in October, we'll have a better view of what that scope and effort will look like, as well as the Craft and Tull site plan scenario that's still unfolding a bit. And this will give us an opportunity, if we're awarded, to start engaging with the Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission, Casey Brewster, and a range of particular experts, so that we collectively add to this knowledge base to essentially assist parks in the prickly business of master planning with an array of different considerations and databases and information collection, all relative to the natural resources underneath all the recreational activity.
Okay.
And if I could just summarize a few things. First of all, we've talked in the past about how important the Glade Restoration Project is. As we all know, there's the collared lizard, and there's 2 or 3 species of statewide concern in the flora components of those glades. And so it is important. It was identified by Theo Witzel as the biggest need that we have for the parks. This year's budget already authorizes the Glade project and some interpretive signage and other things that will be components of this Glade Restoration Project. So by applying for this grant, what it allows us to do is it takes money that we were going to spend anyway and allows us to double down and take the roughly $10,000 that we already had budgeted in different pigeonholes and really double that with the grant that we would receive. So what it does is it allows us to accomplish what we were going to accomplish anyway as far as the glades go, but do some other things, including the excuse me, including the 3 components that were more related to the open space plan and whatnot. And so we end up getting those for free, so to speak. And so, but unfortunately, because we don't have a specific line item for this in the budget, I need the Commission's approval, even though we're not going to be spending any more dollars than we had anticipated anyway. Finally, then, what I would want to say is this is a step. This is a baby step. We plan on applying for that next forestry grant, which, as I recall, had a ceiling of up over $100,000, didn't it, Chris?
It's a Fish and Wildlife Partnership.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It's a big one. And so we have 150 acres of these glades that were identified as needing to be restored. And by doing this first one, we'll be able to get all of our procedures in place, make sure things are working properly, our techniques are working for us, and then we'll hopefully be able to come in with some big dollars that are grants that as I recall, that one doesn't have a match. Do you recall?
It's 3 to 1.
Oh, 3 to 1.
It's more approachable.
Yeah, so at any rate, this one allows us to get started, and then we are hopeful, and we're going to be very aggressive about pursuing that other grant. So something that I thought would take us years and years to do, spending a little bit each year, it might be something that we can accomplish in a few years instead. So I think that's very important. And then finally, most of what we're doing these days, we're looking towards our master plan. And components of this, the open space plan, for instance, will find its way into that master plan. So a lot of the things that we're doing today and in the near future will be with that master plan in mind. Thank you.
Could I add that I would sort of like to apologize for the rush and request that there be a special meeting on top of a workshop. And the reason for speaking this is that we've only known of this grant for maybe 3 weeks. And now that we have learned how to quickly work together and scope out what our options are and look at what the deliverables can be, I would suggest that this nucleus of folks that are producing this continue to work more intimately with the commission and give you guys much more lead time and ability to prepare your questions and your concepts to be more integrated in the grant drafting process. It is very awkward to try to assume what the commission would like and then in the grant components assume what your professionals are going to be able to deliver to you with the assumption that all of this dovetails and works nicely into a planning matrix. So I would just simply say that we apologize for the rush, but we would like to be better integrated with the process on a long-term basis and be more effective and not rush into. So the grants that Scott is mentioning do give us and afford us some time to really compose our strategy and make sure that we're interpreting a constituent involvement, our taxpayers and our users, into what these grants are intended to bring to us. So
Apology accepted.
Okay, thank you.
So what we're looking for tonight is a motion, if it pleases the commission, approving the application of a grant in the amount of $21,887.50 with the understanding that $10,937.50 would ultimately be reimbursed upon the conclusion of the work. And that's what we're seeking tonight.
Yeah, so, and just to clarify what Scott had said, we had $10,000 already budgeted for the glades and the native plant garden that essentially can be used to offset the 10. It's really only 1,000 that isn't budgeted. And if the grant's awarded, then it's a net $9,000 in our favor, so.
Yes, I don't have the budget in front of me, but I know we had $5,000 in it for the glade itself, the glade restoration. But we also had money in there, it was $5,000 or $10,000 for interpretive signage, part of which was going to go as part of the glade. And then also we are going to be putting one bench or picnic table in the area where the interpretive signage is going to be. And we had money already budgeted for that. So in essence, yes, from different sources, we are, this is money that we were going to spend anyway.
Okay.
I would also, one other caveat is if we do it through this grant, a portion of it will be spent this year, but the bulk of it, I think, will end up in 2022 rather than this year. So for budgeting purposes, it's going to come out of a different year.
Okay, can we get a motion?
Could I?
I have a question too, Kevin.
Oh.
I know I missed the beginning.
Yep.
Is this an official special meeting with a single subject special meeting? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to interject really quickly because we were finishing up elements of the draft budget just this evening, and I'd sent something to Scott. So really, when we came up with the draft total that we're working, the grant itself can go to a maximum of $24,000. The match is $12,000. $12,000 from our side and $12,000 federal dollars. So right now, it's looking at the current total cost, $23,872, with a match of, so if you divide that by 2, of course, you come up with $11,963. Just as a suggestion, if it's going to, we're so close to the 24, 12 and 12, that might be the point to, unless you're looking at it from a different angle, Scott, I mean.
No, that was the last amount as of Friday when I put this agenda together.
Okay,
Right.
let's do this. If
Okay.
the maximum grant amount is 24,000 with a 12,000 match, then let's vote to approve 12,000, which would be a $2,000 increase over what's currently budgeted. We can make adjustments. The next meeting, we're going to have budget items to discuss anyway. And when we have third quarter financials, because some of these are the large capital items that we were holding money aside for, we're going to be revising the budget, so we're going to need to anyway. I think this is the 2,000, in addition to what's currently budgeted, if it gets up to that, is a no-brainer considering what the potential return would be. But let's just call it, if 24,000 is the total grant amount, potential grant amount, let's go ahead and approve that amount. Whatever they wind up with in the final draft will be covered up to that $12,000 amount.
I agree with that, what
Okay.
you said.
Okay, so, and just so I'm clear, this grant is, it's done. I mean, we're going to, if we match it, we will get the money? Is that true?
Correct. We can either wait till the end, or we can actually do a draw request as well. So
Okay.
as we complete
Very
the
good.
work, we can apply for our 50% reimbursement.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to craft what the motion looks like. So we're going to approve the expenditure of up to $24,000,
Up to 12,
up to $12,000. Okay,
to receive a $12,000 match,
okay.
which is basically what it is. We spend 12, they give us 12. Up to,
Up to $12,000.
So-
correct?
And want to say towards the Glade Restoration Project? Or? what do
Towards
we-
the grant, I would say.
It's a U.S. Forestry Commission grant.
Grant.
Yeah.
There's 4 components, so.
Okay.
Are you making the motion, Dave? If so, I'll second.
Well, I'm just trying to, I'm trying to kind of craft
Okay.
the motion so that it has everything we need in there. Okay, so towards the AFC grant?
Right. And then what we can do, once you guys have completed the draft of the final draft of the grant, we can get it to Dave and he can add it to the minutes so that it's part of the record. So I would just, in the minutes, I would put it down as the AFC Urban and Community Forest Grant, and then
Okay.
details will be forthcoming.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and motion that the commission approve the expenditure up to $12,000 towards the AFC Urban and Community Forestry Grant.
All
Second?
in favor?
Can we have are we having
Oh,
discussion?
I'm sorry, discussion?
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a comment. So I definitely support the projects that are involved in this, but there's a tendency to go for grant and let's go for as much as we can get. And then you're committed to doing it. And if you don't do it, there is a way to handle that, but it doesn't build the relationships that allows the parks to get grants in the future. So, we're going to be relying on you to really make sure that you follow through on what you say you're going to do. So I would ask that you really look carefully, is this really what we want to do? Is this what we're really committed to doing? And if we need to go a little lower, it's probably better because we can then maybe have that relationship in the future. And otherwise, you can end up, just overburdening yourself, doing stuff that you don't really want to do because you just thought you'd get the money for it. And just really looking at those kind of core issues and making sure you're really doing what you can do and what's the most important things for us to do.
Well, just to address that, this is a project that we've embraced, and it's been in the works now for over a year, and we certainly do intend to pursue this, and the other stages, the next stages that we described. Believe me, there are a lot of other things that we could have been doing with our time than to put this grant together. We just
Right.
saw this as a good opportunity to accomplish something that we were intending to do anyway. So
Yeah, and I'm definitely not saying don't follow up with this, but I have seen the other side of grants and people ending up spending a lot of time doing things they didn't want to do or over-committing themselves.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to put it out there, just, run an eye over this, make sure that it is something that is very doable and is going to really accomplish our objectives.
Okay, I believe that is the case.
Okay, any other comments, questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? None. Unanimous? Okay, that is the only agenda item for the meeting. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous? Special meeting is closed. Now we'll get on to the workshop. All right.
Ready?
You wanna-
The first item I wanted to get the input of the commission on was the master planning process, which we've discussed a little bit from time to time in recent meetings. More than anything, I just want to give you an update of where we are. I did bring some documents for you. One of them is a short form of agreement between owner and consultant for professional services. This is from Craft and Tull. This is a proposed contract for,
I'm sorry, where was that document?
Should be at the bottom of the file. Nope.
perhaps you can get one. There you go.
Now it is.
So, at any rate, this has been discussed in previous meetings, and we were instructed to go ahead and meet with Craft and Tull and get a proposal. I'm also reaching out to at least one other architectural engineering firm, but we do like some of the things that Craft and Tull brings to the table. At any rate, the big portion of this that I'm eager to get is site plans for 3 areas within Lake Leatherwood City Park, for which we expect significant future development. This would be the ball field area, which is also where we have our turnaround or our pickup area for the shuttles, or one of them. And then secondly, the shuttle turnaround area itself, which has a lot of trails converging into one location, going underneath a bridge. Needs some direction, some design, some clarification, et cetera. And then the big area would be the whole day use area, which is the camping, the cabins, the marina, et cetera. We have a lot of work to do out there, of course, as we all know. And I think we've purposed in our minds not long ago that we're not going to be just employing Band-Aids anymore. We want complete, comprehensive designs before we move forward and do things in an ad hoc manner. So this is one thing that I would like to get on the agenda for our next meeting. And possibly I would be asking at that time for this agreement that you all have a copy of now to be approved. It is not on the budget. So it's, let me restate that. I believe we had $10,000 allocated for architectural work, so a portion of it is within the budget. But it's something that the full amount is certainly not within the budget, and so I would need the commission's approval. So we're not asking for any action this evening, but I do plan on in 2 weeks asking that this or an alternate agreement be approved. So I figured this would be a good time to address any questions or comments that the commission might have. There appearing to be none.
Well, no, there's not, let me.
Okay.
So I think there tends to be a great deal of confusion when people use the terminology master plan. Everybody has different expectations of what it is. Everybody has different ideas of what the end result should be. This is not a master planning study.
Yes.
These guys are doing site planning work for us. They're going to start with existing. They will be working hand in hand with Sandy as she's doing her work. The end result of this is going to help inform a master plan that will be a guideline for what the parks does in the future and how it goes about doing it. The things that I have seen that have come out of parks that have been titled master plan in the past, none of them were actually master plans, with the exception of the thing that was done 8 or 10 years ago that basically just outlined what things were important to parks that
Yeah.
should be focused on.
Just an outline.
That's actually the best idea of a master plan that I've seen come out of here.
That's what I think, too.
The subsequent things that had numbers thrown at them, but they were nothing more than budgets, and most of them were kind of pie in the sky, weren't terribly realistic budgets. This is one piece of getting to a point where we can create a master planning document that's going to help inform decisions in the future. That's really what this work is and what we're looking for from Craft and Toll. And it'll include the work that these guys are engaging in as part of the grant. It'll include the work that Sandy Formica is going to be starting. And ultimately, it'll include community input on what things are important. But this is a first step that's necessary to kind of identify what it is that's there and then help us build a framework for developing the park resources in the future.
Is that it then on this item? Can we move on? Or any other comments?
Anyone comments, questions?
Again, if we do propose this at the next meeting, we'll have more details and specifics, but I wanted you each to have a copy of at least the one proposed contract that we have at this time. The next item that I wanted to address, and we also have a document by Stacy Mahurin. It's the email, the 3-page email. This is the proposal for the work at Magnetic Spring. As we all know, because we've talked about this at various meetings, the basins at Magnetic Spring are crumbling, and we've had a lot of people look at them and all come to the same conclusion that there's no way just to repair it. We have to, that wall is disintegrating, or those walls are disintegrating and have to be torn out and completely redone. To do that, we'll also enhance the drainage issues, which are part of the problem that we're having. And also then, since we'll be doing some digging and some concrete work, we will completely replace the surface area up at the top by the basins, as well as the stairs going down to the parking area. This is important for us to do. We had an injury out there where somebody slipped the other day. We do put up caution signs, but people also tear them down. In fact, after this accident happened, there was some police tape that was put up and a sign, and both of those were torn down, as well as one of the parking signs that we put up. So it's one of those things that we really need to get done. And again, this isn't, tonight is not the time where you would actually take action on this, but I would encourage you to look this over, and if you have any questions over the next week or two, give me a call. Either I can answer it or reach out to the contractor to answer your questions, and we hope to get this approved at our next regular meeting. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. That being said, there's one other document that is in the documents I gave you, and that's from Action Seal Coat and Striping, LLC, and that is for repairs to the roadway out into Lake Leatherwood, $29,874.93, and I do anticipate having that on the next agenda as well. So the proposal, or the quote, I've provided for you to take a look at. We are updating, I've reached out to the contractor just to update the quote. This was good for 45 days as of July 19th, and so we're just going to make sure the prices haven't gone up. The price of oil is a big part of this project, actually, and markets have been fluctuating a lot. So I am going to, before our next meeting, I will make sure that this price is still good, or find out what the current price is.
And if you would, send out the other bid that you've got as a point of
Yes,
comparison.
I will,
with this
and
one. There
that's
is
a
a
good
second
point.
bid that's quite a bit higher.
That's a good point. We did get another bid that was substantially more than this, and I can forward that one as well.
And as a point of information for everybody, when it comes time to make the decision on this, apparently the Park Road is still technically a county road. Now, supposedly at some point in time in the past, there was a letter sent to the county stating that we would take responsibility for the road, but nobody can seem to produce that record. Because it is a county road, technically, we have no authority to repair it. The county refuses to repair it. It is only getting worse. We need to take some action on it because the road it's deteriorating to a point, I think probably Parks went through this last time when it was repaved, because of all the back and forth of it technically being a county road. It got to the point where it was just in horrible condition, and we need to avoid that. The places, unfortunately, the places that are bad are the same places that were bad last time.
Yeah, they are.
And it's because there are springs everywhere in the park, and it undermines parts of the roadbed. Now, these guys are at least going to go in and remove all of the soft material, put in new base and compact it, which is the proper way to do it. But this is still just a patch. It's going to get rid of the worst sections. But this is something that has to be addressed. It's the longer we ignore it. From the beginning of the year until now, some of these areas have gotten much, much worse than they were. They're rapidly deteriorating. So that's something to keep in mind. I don't know that anyone expects there to be any issue. The county basically is throwing their hands up. There doesn't seem to be any progress in officially turning over ownership of the road to the city or to Parks, but we need to get it taken care of.
I wonder what the county does. Surely we're not the only people to have this problem. There's got to be other places in the county where it's a county road, but yet it's on property where either another entity or a private person is maintaining it. Have they ever split the cost with somebody, I wonder? Or I've never heard them offer that to us, but I can't imagine if someone else might have asked for that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look around, there are other county roads around here that are in far worse shape than the Park Road is.
True.
I would think that their priorities are going to be elsewhere.
And I bring this up, maybe not at every department head meeting, but at least once a month at those department head meetings, the mayor's taken action, he's sent letters. I've had discussions with people at the county, and they're not going to move.
So if we undertook this, would there be any liability issues?
In reality, no. As a matter of fact, the mayor is the one that said we should probably look at going ahead and doing it. So he's comfortable, I think, that he's exhausted his efforts. But as far as liability, no more than anything else we would do in parks. Although it is technically a county road, it is on our property. So arguably, there might be liability for not doing repairs.
Right.
So I do think that it's the prudent thing to do is get these repairs done, because they won't be done any other way.
Could you, it might be prudent to see if they'll sign a waiver allowing us to make the repairs.
From the county?
Yeah,
Yeah, I just said.
I had a note here.
just a
about
simple
that.
letter of,
Yeah.
waiver of responsibility.
Is there a weight limit on that road if everything was perfect when it was put down?
No, and we actually talked about
Yeah.
that. Scott and I had that conversation as regarding, SUV, large RVs, when there was some discussion around about putting large RV sites in the park. I think there needs to be a limitation. I mean, it is not, I don't think it's a road that was ever constructed properly with a heavy base for heavy
That's what I thought.
vehicles.
When we-
I just don't know, like so many things, I don't know how you enforce it.
Yeah, when
It
we
comes down to an enforcement issue, and we just don't have the capacity to enforce, so.
In the rules and regulations discussion we had, I remember we tried to come up with some wording that would have protected that on paper in the rules, but I don't think we
No.
came up with anything that would make any sense.
I mean, it's something we can look at. I mean, there's nothing that stops us from posting a sign with a weight limit. you don't have to necessarily be able to enforce it if you know, because I think really the only real risk is going to be large RVs pulling in there. You're not going to have semis pulling down there for any reason.
Well, I know that the trolley system runs down there on special calls, and that's a heavy vehicle. And I know coming around that curve, you're going to be pushing that asphalt up the hill as you come up, and that's
Yeah.
the spot right there that always tends to need help and
Yep.
work there.
Yeah, and all those little swales as you're going up down that road is where the worst spots are, so.
And I would also remind the commission that we are going to continue to seek grants that we can apply for more comprehensive repairs, but these are ones that need to be done, certainly before the winter weather hits.
Yeah.
And we did check on their availability to start, and they can start within about 30 days. So we would be able to get this done before the winter weather sets in.
Okay.
Don't you also have delivery trucks go down there too, Scott?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, for the
But I mean,
supplies.
just the big RVs, you get an RV pulling a Jeep, and, I mean, you got a lot of weight, absolutely. Okay, the last item is discussing some fee issues that were left open when we, a couple of months ago, requested approval of some fees. You might recall our policy manual requires that the commission set fees as well as rules. And so I brought some proposals to the commission related to fees, but we had a couple of issues that were just not addressed at the time because they were difficult or needed a lot of explanation. So let me just address the three of these. The first one was for things brief but exclusive use of parks for weddings. We have at least one and one other that's going to start soon doing yoga in the parks. Things like weddings that happen very frequently. Do we want to require a permit and fee application process? And I should just add that this has come up recently, especially when the rules about Basin Park came up. There was some pushback about the requirement that we have a permit for people who are doing performances and whatnot and not requesting a specific amount. They were doing it for donations. So we now have a application process. There's no fee for that, but there's an application because there's two key components. They have to be in a specific location, and they can only do it for 2 hours a day. So there's no way other than having some sort of a permit that enables us to address those things. But we have a similar thing with things like weddings, yoga classes. If somebody is doing a wedding, do we want to require a permit for it? Well, here's my thinking and what I would likely propose after I get your input is for somebody just having a wedding, I think one of the big factors is somebody charging for this. So if you have a wedding planner, and we do have a lot of these wedding services where they are charging for a wedding, I would respectfully recommend that the commission say anytime somebody is doing something for a fee in the park, that they should pay a fee as well. And that's also if they are seeking exclusive use of the park. So in other words, if we had an application process and somebody was going to have a wedding from 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, we would put a sign out that the park is reserved at that time. Or do we just want to leave it like it is? I recall times when I was the gardener and I would pull up in a truck with a blower and hedge trimmers and there's a wedding going on there. This would enable us to make sure that they did have exclusive use of that park for that brief period of time, an hour or 2 hours max. Same things for things like the yoga classes or other sorts of classes. So I would very much like to hear some input from the commission as to what sort of process you want to see for these brief events. Do we want to just let it go as we have been? Or do we want a permitting process? Or do we want one only if a fee is being charged?
So I might take it, there's two issues here. One is permitting and one is fees. Permitting is primarily to avoid conflict.
Yes.
To avoid what?
Conflict, conflict of use. So whether it's a special event in the ball fields or it's a wedding in one of the spring gardens, having a permit so that Parks knows that that activity is going on there and can take steps to make sure that there's not a conflict of use
Yeah.
there, is appropriate. Fees, I think, need to be related to what the cost is to Parks to make that facility available. So the ball fields are one thing. I mean, we put an enormous amount of man-hours and cost into maintaining the ball fields. There should be fees for their use. Special events, the biggest issue is cleanup afterwards, by and large. I know when in the past, when I've been involved with events out there, part of the contract was the event had to provide all the porta potties, had to do all the cleanup, had to leave the space in good condition. That's not always the case. I've been out there after other races where course markings are up, 2 months after the event, that it takes Parks labor to clean it up. So I think there's for those sorts of things, there needs to be a fee associated with it. And what we need to decide is whether we as Parks provide all of the facilities and the cleanup and everything so that we can control it. We know that it's done properly and we're reimbursed by the event organizer for it. Or we require them very clearly to do it, and there has to be a sign-off, and the fee is a portion of a deposit that they have to pay that is only released once somebody from your office has signed off on it, that they have cleaned up appropriately, everything's gone, everything is put back to the condition that it was in before. So,
Well, and if we are going to do that, put out a sign to reserve a park, go out and inspect afterwards. I believe a fee in the range of $50 would be appropriate. So unless I hear otherwise, that's the way I'll write up a policy. And again, this would only be for situations, and I'm looking for input here, situations where either a fee is being charged or somebody is otherwise seeking exclusive use of the park for something. So in other words, if somebody doesn't come in and get a permit because they say, well, we're just having a private wedding and somebody's out there having a yoga class, well then, that's they could have prevented that by getting the permit. So is that what the commission sees?
I don't think we don't want to put ourselves in a position, again, enforcement is going to be the difficult thing. We
Yes.
don't have the manpower to go out and enforce a lot of rules. So the last thing we want to do is create hard and fast rules that are going to require enforcement.
Right.
But yes, the permit is the one mechanism that we have to avoid conflict of use in the
Yes.
facilities.
Okay, I'll put a proposal together.
If someone specifically says it's for a wedding, do you ask for a cleaning deposit too? Or, like you said, include the fee in the deposit? I don't know.
Well, I could do that either way, or we can ask for more money up front, a chunk of which will be reimbursed. The more of those mechanics that we get involved in, the more staffing time is going to be involved.
Yeah.
So I'll think that through, and we're not doing anything right now, so just as Kevin said, just having the permitting process to avoid the conflicts will be a big issue.
Baby steps.
Okay. The next one, this is one that I think we need a lot of attention to and we need to think about and come up with a good policy on, and that's the ball field use. I've got to say that those ball fields are one of our most costly maintenance issues that we have. They have to be mowed at least this time of year, once a week. We have sprinkler systems, which just maintenance on those alone cost us several $100s a year, not even including electricity and such. We do have lighting out there, which cost us money every month. From what I can see, there's only one regular use of the ball fields, and that's for the soccer. No one else is using it on a, let's say, on a coordinated or program-type basis. So really, we have those ball fields for one rather small demographic, and I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't. I'm just, the reality of it is we're spending a lot of money, and we don't get any fees whatsoever for that. Now, I understand that apparently the soccer group was involved in raising funds for that, and I see Ruth shaking her head yes, so maybe that's why up till now there has been no fees charged. So that's why I'm coming to you in advance before drafting a policy to find out, do we want to charge fees for soccer and or other, I mean, it needs to be the same for any group, whether it's soccer or, a football group that wanted to come out and play flag football or something. It's got to be the same for each group. I mean, we can vary by whether they're doing it in the evening and need to use lights, for instance, or what have you, but we can't charge one group and then not charge another unless there's a compelling reason to do so. So for now, in other words, I don't want to target the soccer groups, it's just they're the only ones that this currently affects. But please keep in mind that we spend tens of thousands of dollars every year to maintain those fields, and the soccer groups are the only ones using them. They also have an impact on us. For instance, on October 16th, I believe, they're going to have their jamboree, and there's some estimated 300 cars that are going to be parked down there, and I've seen that event before. There's traffic lined up all the way out to Highway 62, and that is going to affect our shuttles. I've talked with staff today about how we're going to deal with that issue. We're not sure yet how we're going to deal with that issue. We may have to close down the shuttles for that day. We haven't thought that through to come up with a specific plan. But the point is, given the extent of the maintenance of those fields and their limited use, do we want to require fees for their use in the future? And it's one that's going to, if we do, then, it's going to mean at least one group of young athletes that are going to have to come up with some sort of fundraising. So I understand the sensitivity to this topic, but it's one that we kicked the can down the road a little bit a few months ago when we addressed this issue, and we just need to, one way or another, bring it to a conclusion.
Scott, here's some of the things I've seen in the past, there were times when the soccer clubs would physically get out and help with maintenance. The aerator for the field and not the mowings per se, but other parts of maintenance out there. Mostly volunteer basis, coordinated by the soccer groups themselves and or the booster club, things like that through the school. And when they had the baseball, kind of the same thing. They were coordinated through the school or through the booster club. I don't think the parks really did anything other than walk out there and see what they did when they were done. The other thing that has been done is at jamborees and games, there's been times where we only charge people from out of town. We don't charge Eureka teams, only the visiting teams, which was awkward. It's been done where they closed that gate and they would catch people and come in, and you could say, the sign would say, Eureka players in free or whatever, and I don't recall anybody really protesting other than it was such a gray area of who pays and who doesn't. It was awkward sometimes. Most of the visiting people would just say, okay, because we have facilities. We have a bathroom and a concession stand.
Yes.
I think that visiting people were okay to pay a little bit because they felt like they were getting something for their money. And other times I've seen them charge everyone, not just the visiting people, but the Eureka people too. And that money didn't necessarily go to parks. Sometimes it went back to the booster club or back to the soccer groups. I don't think there's anything been done consistently ever from one time to the next. But I will say that there's been awareness of the fact that fees probably should be charged by everybody out there.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. Of course, I don't have a vote, but I don't know that I like the issue of only charging outsiders. You're coming for an event, you want a level playing field, so to speak, and just to charge the visiting teams.
Carroll County residents felt like they were already paying in their taxes and didn't think they should be paying again. That's where that logic was from.
I see.
I don't know. Again, how do you look at people's driver's license when they come in? No, it was more of a voluntary thing almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I also like to see those fields used, so I want to make sure we don't set a fee that's going to discourage, for instance, a new group getting together and coming and using them. So, I mean, I can understand if you're having a big event, that makes more sense to me than if someone just wants to go out and practice for a while. But I think we need to look and make sure that we're not, stopping the use of those facilities.
Something else that we looked at a long time ago and never really got anywhere with the idea was that why not just set up pay parking out there? It's expensive to do that. But if you charge for the parking, that would be your fees for the thing, sort of.
Yeah.
And that was an idea that got tossed around quite a bit. Just, find a way to charge for the parking. Either now, of course, this is so long ago, I didn't think about the kind of meters we have downtown now. It'd be so easy now but it was more of a, the lock boxes and things like that to put your money in, with all this. I always thought that was a good idea. However, the parking lot itself is not very amenable to lining the spaces, but
Yeah,
maybe you could be.
It would need work to be able to manage.
be an
In fact,
easy-
it needs work, period.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be an easy way to
Free for
collect
all.
money. You say you park there, you pay. And just-
And one of our reasons for getting the site plans done is so we can start planning these sorts of things. We have all sorts of options for out there that I don't think there's anything that we won't consider during that planning process. Who knows, we may have a total different look and feel out there before long, but we can only adopt policies for what we currently have in place. So I think we have to consider what we have now and what's being done now. And the reality of it is we have a few soccer games a year, one major event, a soccer event, and that's it. And we're spending tens of thousands of dollars for that. So we do need to see if we can come up with a way to recoup some of those expenses or
We have the-
consider repurposing the.
Well, you have the adult users too, have the groups that get together and just go out there and play all year long, pretty much. Now, I don't think they've ever thought about paying in any way. And collecting parking fees from them would be a good way to make
Right.
them pay, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I think as long as the approach is looking at offsetting expense rather than a fee for use. You think about it, that's really what the shuttles are. The
Right.
shuttles are a way for us to recoup maintenance expense that goes into those trails. The whole reason for setting the shuttles up the way we did, so that they would be profitable, is so that they generated funds that we could then use to pay the trails maintenance people that we have on staff to help maintain the trails. It's no different than the campsites or anything else. It's a way to generate funds to help maintain the park's facilities so that people can continue to use them. So I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at the ball fields exactly the same way. Now, again, the park, I think, a fee to get in, minimal fee to get into the park or a minimal fee to park, I think is a good approach. I'm just not sure how you manage that and keep people honest without throwing more labor at it or more expense at it. So,
And if it were automated somehow, some way, you could also collect data from it and see who's using the park, but I don't know.
Yeah.
That's expensive to automate something like that.
Well, and if we did something along those lines, we could have, for instance, the state park out in Arizona where I spent a lot of years, there was an annual fee. Let me restate that. There was a daily visitor fee, or you could get an annual pass, which ended up being something that you ended up spending about 2.5 days worth of fees for the entire annual pass. So that goes with the kind of public or local concept that you're talking about, is someone who's local and is going to use the park frequently could get an annual pass. But do we want to go there? I mean, if we're going to require fees for parking or for entrance, then really it needs to be both entrances. And that's never been, let me restate that. One of the earlier master plans, as Kevin said, I don't know that I would call many of those master plans, but there was one that was denominated as such, and it it's suggested that we consider the use of entrance fees. So is that something we even want to contemplate at this time?
I think we address it a step at a time. So I think your approach is right. Let's look at the events, look at the things. What do we need permitting for in order to eliminate conflict of use? And then what do we need fees for to help offset expense?
Right.
Okay.
Important to remember that offset expense.
And I think that's primarily it. And then we look, longer range at other things.
All right. I'm not sure that gives me much more direction. I mean, do we want a policy at least drafted initially for your consideration at the
Yeah.
next meeting? That would require fees for sporting events. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, big events.
Okay.
Are you saying that in this instance, we would issue a, quote, special permit, and would we have a fee associated with that would cover, I'm not going to say 100% of parks costs for helping that be successful? Is that what or versus trying to collect fees for parking, because I don't think you're going to be successful there.
What I envisioned if we were going to charge a fee for the field use would be just that. It would be a lump sum fee for the use of one or more fields. Typically, towns use like the $75 to $100 range for that sort of thing. So that's probably how I'll initially draft it. And it may be that I have to come back a couple of times before I get something that's acceptable to the commission. I will email it out to everybody. That way, if somebody has a suggestion they want to make or a comment.
Well, and I would suggest sitting down with the soccer folks and just
Yeah,
talking
I'll
through
do
it with
that.
them.
I will do that.
The other things are going to be, big events like Fat Tire Festival or something like that. And those are ones that, we can structure the fee based on what the event is. You think about it, Fat Tire Festival the last few years started charging for parking out there,
Yeah, they
and yet we didn't charge them any fees for the use of the facilities.
Yeah.
And we provided all the porta potties.
Right.
So, things had gotten a bit skewed in the past years where it needs to flip back the other way and look at the impacts and what do we need to do to offset it.
Scott, are you going to be required to have additional porta potties at this event?
I haven't heard from Sheree on that. They haven't in the past because we have the restrooms up there.
Okay,
If they do, then they'll certainly be required to bring
that's
them.
okay.
I don't recall that 2 years ago that they had porta potties. I may be wrong, but I don't recall that they.
Okay.
Yeah, I also hope we will be consider the fact that groups like the sports groups have had a hard time for the last year or so, and they may not be in the best financial situation.
Yeah.
So we may need to delay this a little while to give them a chance to get.
Well, that's why I suggest he talks
Yeah.
through it with them.
And then finally, was the major events, and I think there's no way for a major event like a Fat Tire Festival, but to do them on a case-by-case basis. But one of the things that we have to do is define what is a major event. I was thinking that any time a fee was being charged and there were X number of people or more, I was thinking 25 people or more, and a fee being charged. And I think I would add exclusive use of an area of the park. I think that those three factors combined would be what would trigger the requirement for us to negotiate some sort of a fee for an event. So in essence, if somebody's just a group of people that wants to go out and do, let's say, a flag football event or a Frisbee golf event, and there's just 10 or 15 of them, they're doing it on their own, they're not charging fees, they're not asking for exclusive use of the area, then I would say no, that's just part of patrons using a park. Those are the three areas that I was going to use as the trigger. And again, my thinking is for a major event, there's no way that we can come up with some sort of a formula. Every major event's going to be different. So what I'm looking for is just the trigger for us to require that permit. And it's those three areas are the ones that I would be looking for, unless anyone else has further input. Okay, well, that's all I had.
Anything else we need to address?
Maybe not right now. I need to think about this one.
Okay. All right, then I think that's a wrap.
We're done?
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.